Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the news, expected news. I think it's fair to say that the International Criminal Court has approved the requested arrest warrant for key leaders of Hamas and the Israeli government, including, of course, Netanyahu. But what do people think is likely to happen? Obviously, nobody expects anyone to actually be arrested as a result of these warrants, but that doesn't mean to say it can't have an influence. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So I suppose the first thing to explain is what exactly the arrest warrants are and for whom they are for. From a practical point of view, the warrants are probably just mostly for two members of the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. But this wasn't a one-sided affair. There were also applications for arrest warrants for three Hamas leaders as well, one of which has still been granted. The thing is, the other two are dead. They're definitely dead. So there was no point in issuing an arrest warrant for a dead person. And the third, although an arrest warrant has been issued, is considered likely to be dead as well. It's just that we don't know that for certain. And given that the ICC isn't into seances, the meaningful decisions today concern the Israeli defendants, who are most definitely alive. So what are the arrest warrants for? Well, I'm guessing a lot of people will be commenting on this and will not have read a single line of the statement from the ICC. So let's go through it so there's at least some accuracy somewhere. The ICC are saying there is credible evidence that Netanyahu and Gallant may be responsible for crimes against humanity and war crimes, specifically related to the withholding of aid and allowing civilians to be killed. Indeed, the targeting of civilians. Specifically, the war crimes cited are the use of starvation as a method of warfare and intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population. And the crimes against humanity are murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. Now, the risk of having people not interested in facts have another meltdown. Yes, I think the word genocide is a reasonable term for the likes of you and I to describe the way the Israeli government have been conducting itself, but it is worth noting that the ICC, which does also decide on matters of genocide, has not said that the crime of genocide is part of this process. It is specific war crimes and specific and general crimes against humanity. So if Netanyahu and Gallant, or the maybe surviving Hamas leader named, ever were to be brought before the ICC, they are not, at least at this point, going to be charged with genocide. So for those who keep insisting on using the term, I'll reiterate again, it's a perfectly valid term to use in everyday language. But if you're a lawyer and you are concerned about the accuracy of legal terms, there has not been a charge of genocide levelled at Netanyahu, even by lawyers who want him arrested for crimes which are at the same level of seriousness. And accuracy does matter. Surely the point most people should agree on is that Netanyahu, for his own personal benefit, is carrying out a campaign of ethnic cleansing with a level of barbarism rarely seen even from some of the world's worst monsters. Getting fixated on a legal term that neither you or I understand just makes some people look like they want to win debating points rather than actually caring about international humanitarian law or the victims of it when it is abused. But that out of the way, what's the impact? Well, nobody's actually going to carry these arrest warrants out, right? Nobody named on them is likely to travel to a country which is a signatory to the Rome Statute. That would be a little foolish. That will mean that Netanyahu will not be travelling to the UK. So unlike Congress in America, there's no danger we will be inviting him to speak to our national legislature or at all in the country. Also creates a bit of a global dynamic. Now, although lots of countries want the civilian population of Israel protected, hence the support for Israel as a state, not many back the Israeli government. Pretty much only the United States does so. During a vote on the latest UN resolution calling for a ceasefire and the return of hostages, only the United States voted against it. No one abstained. We didn't abstain. Every other member of the Security Council, permanent or temporary, voted in favour. And in truth, what often happens with these things is resolutions seem deliberately designed not to get consensus, but to force some countries to go, well, you know, you haven't got that bit right, so we're going to have to abstain or vote against it in order to make silly political statements back home, right? the UN is just as much a place for scoring political points as anywhere else. But this resolution was very reasonable. It wasn't one-sided. It called for an end to hostilities and a full release of hostages. No further conditions. Who could possibly argue with that? Other than someone who wants one side or the other to completely annihilate their opponents. Because that's all that's left now. You know, if it creates an interesting geopolitical trajectory, because if you bring Trump into the mix as well, he's already likely to piss the world off with his intended global trade war and scaling back from the climate action commitments. He is also very likely to be much worse than Biden on Gaza. He will send all the same weapons and encouragement without any private phone calls tell him to at least look after the civilians. In fact, there's one passage in the ICC statement which makes an interesting point. It says that the Israeli government seemed to have made no effort to meet its international obligations on humanitarian aid. That the only aid which has ever been allowed in appears to have come as the direct result of the intervention of other governments, most especially the United States. Most other governments don't really have much clout. In other words, the ICC seems to be saying to the Israeli government, look, you're not doing enough to protect civilians, and when you do the bare minimum at times, you get no credit for that either because you did it grudgingly. You know, they said that the decisions allowing or increasing humanitarian assistance into Gaza were often conditional. So what some are suggesting is that the majority of the world's governments are now likely to harden their attitude towards Israel, but also this could further weaken America's credibility, you know, not just Israel's. America is about to stand alone in attacking this ICC decision, apart from Israel itself, of course. Now, neither Israel nor the USA are like signatories, so they're not bound by decisions anyway. Not that it matters. By American law, the United States should not be supplying weapons being used by the IDF in Gaza anyway, just as with the UK law. So the fact that they are doing so means they don't really care about the law. But nonetheless, there will be no grounds for a legal challenge if Trump allows Netanyahu to visit the United States again, although Bibi might want to avoid any stopovers en route. That being said, as one journalist pointed out, let's say the American government, so Trump in this case, does allow him to visit the USA again. That will just weaken American leadership on the world stage even further. Finally, I saw a report of an Israeli journalist saying something. He said that the inclusion of what he describes as a dead Hamas leader in the warrant just makes it look like a farce. Oh, it was only included to make it look like it was balanced. But this is absolute bollocks. The request for the warrants was submitted months ago, and it had 2 Israeli leaders and 3 Hamas leaders named on it. At the time, they were all very much alive. It is neither the prosecutor nor the court's fault that Israel have killed off the other defendants in the case before the decision was reached, right? And it is interesting that nobody raging against this decision has managed to come up with a single credible objection. And the idea of attacking an international court is not really going to win you support on the world stage. And then you have another member of the Israeli government reported as saying that Israel should just annex the West Bank in response to the ICC. And you think, okay, that makes you look respectable, doesn't it? That's a normal reaction, isn't it, from a grown-up government? So your plan is to steal more land and subjugate more people because you didn't like a court decision. I mean, I don't get, in all honesty, I understand, I suppose, the idea that in Israel they feel beset on all sides and it creates a fortress mentality. But I still don't see how an entire country can just look at this madness. And I know it's not everyone in Israel, but a critical mass in Israel can look at this madness and not realise that it is massively weakening their national security. I also don't get why America don't see this as undermining their own global leadership. They're not securing their security. They're throwing it down the toilet. And for what? For what? For the sake of one man who wants to avoid going to prison. Although I suppose on that score, the Israeli and the American governments are about to be led by birds of a feather there. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.